Declassified documents out of the White House reveal new details about an FBI investigation into President Trump and potential Russian collusion. Now, those documents say the FBI launched the probe to find out whether the president acted as a Russian asset when firing former FBI Director James Comey. That's a theory the Trump administration officials say has not been backed by evidence. Live now to CBS News Justice reporter Jake Rosen combing through all of those documents. So, Jake, President Trump has long said this is a hoax. This is a witch hunt. What do the documents have to say?
Well, they allege that there was some deliberative FBI internal documents that were later handed over to former special counsel Robert Mueller, who, as you know, in the broader scope of his investigation, looked into whether there was any contact or communications between the Trump campaign in 2016 and any officials in the Russian government or people working on behalf of the Russian government. This all really circulates around the firing of James Comey. President Trump, for a long time, wanted Comey to publicly announce that the FBI was not looking into him and his campaign, and after he was elected and won and was in office in 2017, wanted Comey to further go along that route. He eventually fired Comey because he refused to do that. As we know, these documents the next day after this, despite them being released today, after they were initially written up, were handed over to the Mueller investigation. And we should note that, just to fact check the White House on this, Robert Mueller did not find that President Trump was working underneath or working for the Russians. But what is at the center of this is that there were concerns by the FBI whether the Trump administration or campaign or President Trump himself were willingly or unwillingly a part of some kind of Russian operation. Again, just to kind of set the stage here, this has resulted in what's happened in this administration, which is that President Trump and his Department of Justice have gone after Comey repeatedly, once in a failed indictment that is currently on appeal but was dismissed because the prosecutor who brought the charges was not legally appointed, and again in that 8647 post of the seashells that will be litigated later this fall and early next year likely. Certainly just more documents looking backwards from this White House on James Comey's tenure as FBI director, but nothing necessarily newsy in here that was not debunked in an official special counsel report from the Department of Justice under President Trump in his first administration.
Okay, so let's set that aside because, Jake, I've got to ask you about Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. He took questions from reporters today. What did he have to say?
Yeah, the big question for all the Department of Justice reporters on our minds today was whether he has confidence in Jeanine Pirro. He announced as part of a press conference on the cartel that Washington, D.C. and the prosecutor's office here, under Jeanine Pirro's leadership, is going to be working on potentially prosecuting some Mexican gang members. As a result, DOJ reporters asked Blanche if he has confidence in Pirro and kind of what the tete-a-tete between her and Doug Burgum and President Trump over the weekend really stemmed from and resulted in, and whether he has confidence in her leadership. He said that Pirro is doing a great job and that if President Trump wants to fire her, which CBS News has reported is not on the table as of today, he has the right to do so, but credited her for her hard law enforcement policies here in the district. Blanche obviously in a very tough spot because looking into the weekend, it's likely that the Senate could have a vote to confirm him, and there are some senators on the fence right now. We saw Senator Collins from Maine say that she was not going to vote for him. He can only afford to lose one more of Lisa Murkowski from Alaska or potentially Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, who have all kind of held out when reporters have asked from CBS News on Capitol Hill today whether they would commit to fully supporting him. This comes, as we know, Reed, on weeks of negotiating with two other senators who finally caved and said they would vote for Blanche in this confirmation battle when the confirmation vote eventually comes.
All right, and while we have you, we have some breaking news. Speaking of Todd Blanche, because we have news out of New Mexico that there's a lawsuit, DOJ getting sued over the Epstein files. What is this rooted in?
That's right, Reed. In February of this year, the New Mexico Attorney General's office tried to investigate what potentially happened at the Zorro Ranch, which is a property that Epstein owned and operated and traveled to often, according to our CBS News review of those documents going back to last year, with potentially underage victims that he and Ghislaine Maxwell brought there to do terrible things to them. And New Mexico has said after these documents were put out that they wanted to conduct their own investigation, and they said they went through informal and formal means to try to get access to documents under that Epstein Files Transparency Act and other requests to the DOJ. They said they have essentially been stonewalled and are suing today for access to additional DOJ files that are not public about the Zorro Ranch and what the Department of Justice has. We should note that a Department of Justice spokesperson told CBS News that New Mexico has provided no lawful basis to get any of those documents, but they did say that they are available to assist the state with its investigation if they go through the proper means. So certainly a potential high-stakes court battle set up down in New Mexico for potentially more Epstein files to be released, or at least for it to have a judge chime in on whether the DOJ is properly holding or not giving these files to states who are conducting their own investigation into the late financier turned sex offender.
Of course, those survivors would say, bring on the discovery. Jake Rosen, thank you so much. Good to talk to you.